very creatively. It's called Reclaim the Agenda. Reclaim the agenda, tell the world that when the tides have turned, it's 'cause we're together standing for something. We are all world-changing women. Reclaim the agenda. Reclaim the agenda. We started back in 2010 when a group of women met in Women's Take back then. Frustrated women centres, funding would be cut, killing the women's movement, but you couldn't let that happen. Women would suffer, there would be a chance the movement would never recover. So an idea was born, let's all group together and reclaim the agenda to make our world better. Reclaim the agenda. Reclaim the agenda. A collective whose values put women to the fore, with activism, feminism, woman at the core. 6 things to address, to grow, to fight, to make progress. A life free from poverty, an cessation of discrimination, healthcare where our needs are met, a life where we aren't under abusive threat, to live in a world where women make decisions equal to the men, are met without derision, and finally access to childcare. Basically, a life that's fair. Reclaim the agenda, tell the world that when the tides have turned, it's 'cause we're together standing for something. We are world-changing women. Reclaim the agenda. Reclaim the agenda. Let those two dancing at the back. Music break just for that. Absolutely beautiful. Love it. We've had campaigns like childcare for all, and Reclaim the Night where we refuse to be small, or welfare reform where we shouted loud and clear. Politicians have plenty, our purses are empty. We've had some achievements but with more to go. We're stronger together, stronger than you know. From here to equality, the heritage tours to the mural above Shankles. Women send their doors to endless marches and big rallies. To her story, equal marriage allies. Within our movement with intersectionality, every type of background, individuality, and so maybe we might not always agree, but with respect and understanding we move forward as a team. So reclaim the agenda, tell the world that when the tides have turned, it's 'cause we're together standing for something. We are world-changing women. We won't sit down, lower our voice. We demand our rights, our place, our choice. The future's ours, let's just take it. We will be the ones to make it. Together we will challenge the misogyny that we faced in a world run by the patriarchy. We've had years of traction, of hope, of interaction. Still we sound our klaxon after a decade of action. Reclaim the agenda, tell the world that when the tides have turned, it's 'cause we're together standing for something. We are all world-changing women. Reclaim the agenda. Reclaim the agenda. Reclaim the agenda. Thank you.
You're all very welcome here today. I think we're up against it with the weather, but it's also being recorded on Zoom, and the whole thing will be recorded. So I'm sure even some of us here will have an opportunity at a later date to sit in meetings and watch the whole events without feeling under pressure. So, without much further ado. I'm really delighted to be here today, launching our book, Phenomenal Women, which is RTA's pictorial history over the past 10 years. And I'm sure all of you know who RTA is, but just in case, I'm just going to reiterate who we are. So we're a collective of women's centre reps, grassroots feminists and trade union activists who encourage and promote women's activism through education, campaigning and celebration to create a fairer society. Those involved in Reclaim the Agenda include members from the formal women's sector like WRDA, Women's Tech, Shankill, Greenway, Windsor, Falls, Ballybean Women's Centres, Women's Support Network and other feminist groups such as Reclaim the Night and Belfast Feminist Network who have brought fresh ideas and activists to the table, while Youth Action and NUS, USI have ensured that young people have a place in the debates and actions. Our key demands are a life free from poverty and discrimination, from domestic and sexual violence and abuse. We demand healthcare services and childcare provision that meets our needs and to live in a world where women are equally represented as decision makers. So way back in 2010, a few of us came together, and it was really to create a sense of unity and camaraderie between us as the government cuts and the changes to the welfare system were starting to bite in. 2011 was Women, and it was the centenary of International Women's Day, and we thought this is our opportunity to bring everybody together and celebrate our strengths. We named ourselves Reclaim the Agenda and mobilised to organise a public rally on the 8th of March and host a programme of events that celebrated women's achievements, acknowledged their contribution to society, and importantly, made women visible. Reclaim the Agenda's first campaign was called the Empty Purse Protest, and we went out to all of the women's centres, we went to jobs and benefits offices, we went to Stormont, and this was about making women visible and proactive. And let's see now if anybody can remember our chant. So, politicians have plenty. Our purses are empty. That's great. Never leaves you. And this fight back did lead to mitigations being introduced, which are still in place today. We want to live in a world where women are equally represented as decision makers. And this is so important when we talk about creating real change. It always comes back to this. Getting women round the table and into decision-making spaces. Commission for Public Appointments NI also take this seriously, acknowledging that boards are diverse, operate more effectively, and for several years there's been regular bulletins on all board opportunities and host training sessions for those applying to demystify the application process. And over the years, the process has been tweaked to ensure that skills are recognised. Public appointments and public boards are critical spaces that we need to see greater activity in. And in the last 3 years, Reclaim the Agenda has worked in partnership with WRDA, the Equality Commission, and the Commission for Public Appointments NI to host events that promote women on boards. We hosted an event last month showcasing women serving on boards and highlighting the real difference it makes for positive outcomes. We are also looking at how we can support women in these roles, as when women speak out, we face a barrage from social media and even the mainstream press. And this is one reason why women are cited for not going forward to sit on boards, and we need to tackle this. We need to tackle it together and find a way to support women to speak out in the media. Childcare remains a real barrier for women accessing education and employment, and this is a big issue for parents and for grandparents, and RTA fully supports the Childcare for All campaign, and we have provided a platform base for campaigning for change. The Childcare for All campaign now has an all-party group at Stormont that's focused on childcare and has set up a series of wider consultations to inform them. Healthcare. We demand a healthcare that meets our particular needs as women, and this is a key pillar that we campaign for. We don't have the same healthcare provision as our sisters in the rest of the UK, and this must change. Campaigns for reproductive health continue, even though the duty is on our health minister to implement that and to commission the services. So until that happens, we will continue to campaign and make our voices heard. Now, while these issues are not solely the campaign of reclaiming the agenda, our role is to ensure that women at grassroots are listened to and informed on the lobbying to ensure that their voice is heard. We don't do this alone. It is the make-up of reclaiming the agenda that is our strength in creating the collective change needed. A life free from discrimination. Well now, what does that look like? It's pretty hard to imagine considering we face discrimination daily. Well, if you're not from an ethnic minority community, you'll not experience that discrimination. If you're not in a wheelchair, you won't experience that discrimination. If you're not a lesbian or a trans woman, you won't experience that discrimination. But it still happens, and sadly in Northern Ireland, we can be very intolerant of anybody different. A hangover from our past, perhaps, but it is the reality for so many of our new neighbours from other cultures that they face discrimination daily. Reclaim the agenda, encourage and promote representation from all minority communities, and will support them in any way that we can. It is by recognising that we are so many things, not just women. We can be young, disabled, gay, and face multiple levels of discrimination. Reclaim the agenda accepts all women at our table, and we accept women who identify as women. A life free from violence and sexual violence is our final key objective. Reclaim the agenda, along with WRDA, Women's Support Network, and the Northern Ireland Rural Women's Network, formed a partnership called Raise Your Voice Against Sexual Harassment. We wanted to tackle the underbelly of the beast when it comes to violence against women and girls. We want to eliminate sexual harassment and sexual violence in our communities. We also know that our work with trade unions, that there are policies for workplaces, and we clearly saw that there was a gap because there was nothing like that for sexual harassment, experiencing sexual harassment in communities, on a bus, walking down the street, in a public building, whatever. So we set out to work with women and girls in year one to hear how sexual harassment impacts women and take those impacts to work with men and boys in year two. Then COVID hit, just as we were getting into year stride. But the women's movement wouldn't let a global health pandemic stop us. So we moved online like everybody else, and we deliver public workshops. Let's talk about sexual harassment and everything you wanted to know about consent, but we're afraid to ask. We brought motions. Our first motion we brought to Belfast City Council, and that was March 2020, and that was to make misogyny a standalone hate crime. And that was passed on a cross-party basis. And then we thought, well, why not just take it to, there's only 11 councils in Northern Ireland, let's take it to the rest of them. And actually we've worked with every council in Northern Ireland. And you'll find out all about this work on the Raise Your Voice website. So, as I said earlier, Reclaim the Agenda doesn't work alone. We don't have the mantra ourselves alone. We work in partnership, we work collectively to create change, and our showcase event is International Women's Day, now an annual event in our calendar, and a 2-week festival, as all our women's centres take part, hosting events, and bringing women together to celebrate our achievements, while reminding ourselves of the current challenges and work that still needs to be done. Following on from Renaming the Streets project, which led on to the Heritage Bus Tours, which led on to the booklet Celebration of Women, we developed the Century of Women website. which celebrates and publicises the role of women across 10 decades. So it really wasn't that unusual that we decided to write our own history of 10 years of activism. Because if we didn't write it ourselves, who would? It charts our international women's activities, 10 years of campaigning and protesting, and really so much more. And you're going to hear about that more from our fantastic panel of guest speakers. We have Amanda, we have Dawn, we have Lynda, and we have probably our youngest supporter, Alicia. Alicia has been involved in, marches, rallies from Tote. In fact, I think it's at page 73. You'll see a photograph of her in her suffragette outfit. And we're gonna hear about what she does in her school to promote the work of RTA. So really, without much further ado, I did have sort of like a line-up, but I've had to scrap that because Amanda has to go and take a phone call, a very important phone call. And so we're going to start, and I'm going to hand over to Amanda. So Amanda is, just to give you a wee bit of an introduction there, Amanda.
Thank you.
She's doing a fantastic job, promoting women in the media. She does that job through a feminist lens, and she's also a very good friend of RTA and the women's sector overall. So Amanda, over to you. Thank you.
So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Amanda Ferguson, and I'm so pleased to speak to you all today, and everybody at home, hello. Lynda Walker is one of a handful of feminist women I would go out and do a storm for, so here we are. And I was honoured to accept Lynda and Helen and the team's invitation to write the conclusion for this powerful book. The work that Lynda and her sisters and allies and comrades have done in the women's sector, in the rights sector for decades, for longer than I've been alive, is so commendable. And we benefit today from the work that they have done. So we add to that, we keep pushing, we fight, we persist. Women's struggle is universal. So what happens right here matters. Every rally, every hashtag, every clip, every meeting, every feminist you look around the room and see lifting up other women. What we do matters to the women who can't speak out. It matters to the women who may not even know that they need us. It matters to those without hope. It matters to the women who may not even agree with what our aims are. It matters to the women in Poland and to the women in Texas, so solidarity to all of them. We really do have to keep the pressure on, because the fight for women's rights is never a done deal. I remember hearing the Green Party leader Claire Bailey talking on this theme, that there'll always be those who seek to roll back on what is achieved. So we have to be energised and prepared for all that we're going to face in the years ahead, because this is a lifetime project we all take on to help improve women and girls' lives. So when I hear women speak, I feel radicalised in a good way, it's how I've described it, whether that's Bernadette Devlin at a rally at Ryder Square, or the works of Angela Davies, who we know our own Lynda was instrumental in bringing to these shores. Life ends, but activism endures. So the timescale for this book roughly fits in with my journalism career, which so far is just over a decade and counting, so touch wood, that continues. It's 12 years since I turned 30, and since I decided to change my life, to go for what I wanted, to do what I should have done whenever I was 18 but wasn't ready for it. So I went back to study as a mature student to Belfast Met, to the Tech as I called it. I'm old enough to call it the Tech, to become a qualified journalist. So the grammar school that I had attended as a girl used to use the Tech as a threat, as somewhere that you would end up if you didn't achieve what they wanted. Now this was bogus. The vocational journalism qualification I have from Belfast Met is by far the most valuable qualification that I have on my CV, and it's led me to getting to know the amazing women's sector in the north, or Northern Ireland, however you describe where we're from. So I have very many happy memories in the events outlined in the book,
I've been present for some of them, and I'm always blown away by the sisterhood and the common purpose amongst women, and I think that's something that we really need to focus on, because we need to avoid the temptation to turn on each other. The patriarchy wants us to be arguing with each other and among ourselves, make no mistake on that. So this pandemic has really revealed who we are as people. It shows if you believe in community and collective solidarity. It's highlighted the injustices that women experience and the disproportionate impact on their lives. And it's highlighted contributions from very many amazing women. It's highlighted Louise Coyle from the Northern Ireland Rural Women's Network. It has highlighted women like science communicator Dr. Lindsay Broadbent, all the women speaking out about the impact on women through Women's Aid, through Alliance for Choice, and all the faces that I'm looking at today, and I'm sure many of you joining us at home as well. So, I have been criticised in my work for quoting Greta Thunberg, blah, blah, blah. We're sick of the blah, blah, blah. And indeed, a male broadcaster recently said, what is she, 17, get a life? And I said, she's actually 18. And I thought to myself, she's nearly 19, and she's one of the most impressive young women with an international platform. And I think that's why the patriarchy hates her so much. She's fearless, and she's making change, and she's shown what one girl can do. So yes, I will quote her, and I'll do my bit to help build up our girls locally as well. We all know of all the problems that women face, of poverty, of discrimination, of domestic and sexual violence, around healthcare, around childcare, and equal representation, and the list doesn't end there. So there's a lot to do. We must demand our rights and help create the circumstances in which the solutions we know will work are implemented. So I'm actually speaking at the start of this event rather than the end, because I have to duck out for a final hearing of my divorce. So I will be, it'll be a 5-minute hearing on an online link. I have found love again with my Paddy. He's a kind, decent, good and loving feminist man. Yes, they do exist. And he's my friend. Some of them are in this room right now. And he respects me and shows me he loves me in word and in deed. So it feels very fitting that I should be attending such a powerful event today as I get divorced, as I reclaim my own agenda and move on with a new chapter of my life. So thank you all for joining together, and get everyone you know to buy this incredible book, which you can get from No Alibis or Cultureland or from the Shamway printers. Thank you very much.
I want to say thanks very much, and I think this is a historic occasion. I know there are more people out there, possibly more people out there than what there are in here. We had apologies this morning. I'm very sorry that Therese Moriarty couldn't get here, but the weather put her off. and who could blame her? I want to thank all the people that helped produce this book. In particular, Jenny Bell and Emma Campbell, the photographers, and one of them, another one's here with us today, Kevin Cooper. And without the people getting the photographs took, and without the photographers, we wouldn't have a book. So that's the end of the story. I want to thank those that provided messages, and also details, and some writing, like Margaret Ward, Kelly Turtle, Dawn Purvis, Naomi O'Connor, Orla O'Connor, Deirdre O, Deirdre McKenna, Kelly O, Mark Thomas and Gemma Hutton, who were involved in the stand-up for choice and provided some details. Footprints for Shankill Greenway Women's Centre. Of course, Anne and Helen and Danielle Roberts, who had an input in editing the book as well. A particular thanks to Sinead Morrissey, Dr. Sinead Morrissey, who wrote us a message for us, a greeting, and also Eleanor McAvoy, who wrote a greeting as well. And we have Eleanor's song in the book, A Woman's Heart. And that was really, around about, I think sometime in 2020, I was listening to an RTE programme, and it called A Woman's Heart, and they were singing in it. But they were also saying how they supported the campaign in the Republic. And I thought, we have to have that song in the book. There's also another song, and that's Bread and Roses, and really, that is like the anthem of the women's movement. Now, the book is not a history of the women's movement, but it's a contribution to it. So I have to say that looking back at the charter that we had in 1975, many of the things that are on that charter are still being campaigned for now. And I think the full demands for have to be won for the reproductive rights. I was watching Ewan McCall recently, a couple of weeks ago, and thinking about what he said in terms of actually campaigning. And he says, anyone who has ever been involved in working class struggle must accept the fact that a major part of their life will be involved in losing battles. And if I'd have been afraid of that, I'd have packed it in a long time ago. So the question of reproductive rights and everything else that we're fighting for is still in front of us. But I have to say that campaign, the Yes campaign, brought a lot of women together, North and South. I've actually, I also have to, of course, mention Sinead Cameron, who did the layout for the book, and I think she did a very good job. It was a learning experience for her as well. And if I drove other people mad, I probably drove her mad as well. But she took it very well. So, one of the major things in the book, as Anne says, is International Women's Days and the rallies. And as a person that actually helped to organise rallies on a number of occasions, you can appreciate the work that goes into it and appreciate the work that Helen and others do in organising the International Women's Day. The one thing that has changed is the reaction and the help of the City Council. Because I remember in the, I think, late 70s, early 80s, Jenny Williams, who was one of the women involved in the Women's Centre, the first Women's Centre that we opened, was at the council meeting. And there were a few people there, and they were trying to get funding, and she gave a very powerful speech about the funding. And one of the councillors says to her, is it Miss or Mrs? So she said, actually, it's Doctor. So, put him in his place. But the council now has a window there that's fantastic, and also they help with the International Women's Day every year. I'll say a few words about young people, because that's one familiar thing now. We have youth action on International Women's Day. And we have with us, as Anne said, Alicia, who was at the age of 10, is in that book on page 73, actually. And I knew her father very well. Her father has died, unfortunately, but I think I first at least met Alicia when she was 2 years old, on May Day, because her father was a fireman and he proudly marched behind the Fire Brigade Union banners on May Day. So remember my first meeting with Alicia when she was 2 years old, and it's really great to have her here today. And now I hear she's involved in the Youth Assembly. So she says that they do in Stormont what the big assembly does, but I think they probably do it a lot better. So, I just have to say that about being left out of history. Mary Cullen actually wrote about the fact that historians said that, well, since women are not actually in public politics and not participants, etc., then we can't include them. But she pointed out that the suffrage movement was a global movement, a worldwide movement that were very highly visible, but they very much got left out, and it's been up to feminists and Marxist historians to bring women into the picture. I'm going to finish in a minute now, if you'd like to know. But I do want to refer to the question of war, because war and peace is something that is referred to a lot in the book. And I read this morning in the newspaper that there is going to be a new peace declaration demanding that the executive and Irish and British governments reject any plans to allow arms manufacturers to be established in Ireland. And so Maria Corrigan is one of the people behind that. They're launching that in Downpatrick today, so you could read about it. I think it's a very important initiative. And if you read about the women in Code Pink in America and the things that they do for peace, I think that's very important. They're the kind of women that I would like to see in power. So I have to say that I want to just say a little bit about Rachel from New York. And I see that Nancy Waller is actually with us today. She's in New York. She's somebody from New York. And it was through Nancy that I met Rachel, and we invited her to Belfast. And when she came to Belfast, she spoke in Victoria College. And to a room full of young girls, not much younger than her, in fact. And she's an engineer, and she designed, I'm not sure what it was, but she designed a device that would help with heart diseases. And she spoke to the women and the young women, and they were very, very receptive. But she says, and it's in 2015 chapter, speaking from the platform, she says that on the street wall there's a saying, wage war against wars. For me, as a scientist and engineer, it's my moral and ethical responsibility to use my talents for the good of humanity. Not to make weapons or further violence. I pledge to wage war against violence, against destruction. I pledge to make peace and to help this world. Thank you. So having said that now, I'd like to thank all the people that have joined us today. There might be one or two of my relatives in Sheffield out there, but I'm not sure. And if they are, thank you for coming. And thank everybody for helping to organise today. I actually did want to mention the Turner Prize. The Array Studios, that's brilliant.
Firstly, what an honour. This is really weird. This is something I've never done before. So thank you for letting me be here today and also getting out of school. So looking at the picture of my younger self in this great book, I've realised how long I've been involved in International Women's Day and working the agenda. I've learned of feminist fairy tales and I've been introduced to strong and inspirational women who have just made me who I am today. Some of them are even here today, and I just want to thank you while I'm here. Because I never actually tell you, which is have influenced, otherwise I wouldn't be standing here, and be a complete corruption in my school and causing issues. In 2017, I was privileged to hear Angela Davis talk and demean her, and even have a photograph taken of her. How many 12-year-olds even get that opportunity? I even have the picture with me as proof. The book tells the story of the past 10 years. To paraphrase a quote in the book, I've looked to older women for their experience and vision, and as a young woman, I want to be able to inspire others. To this end, I've joined the Northern Ireland Assembly and I'm on the Education Committee. That I never thought would ever happen, and in its first year it's been launched. Couldn't be any more grateful to be a part of it, because now I can make a difference, whereas I wouldn't have made it a couple of years ago. Here's to the next 10 years and beyond, and I'm ready to play the part.
I'm absolutely delighted to be here today. When Lynda told me that they were documenting what has happened with our Reclaim the Agenda over the last 10 years, I thought, brilliant. Who came up with this idea? Of course, we know who came up with the idea. And I think what's really important, and Lynda mentioned it, is that when history comes to be written, it's always his story, it's never her story. And this is a really important contribution to the history of the women's movement in Northern Ireland. And I want to thank in particular Helen, Lynda, Anne, the drivers and the driving force and the force to be reckoned with that always keep this going. There are others as well, and Lynda has mentioned them all, and Danielle, who's online, or Danny, as she's known, who helped with this to produce the book as well. So thank you so much. I have to say, I really enjoyed reading it. Lynda dropped it off to me on Saturday, and I was thinking, I'm never going to get through this because I was away for the weekend. And so I came back on Sunday night and lifted the book and went, yay! It's great. It really is. It's a great pictorial history, and the narrative in it is great as well, and it takes you no time to read it. But the feeling of affirmation that I got from that was really overwhelming. Just looking, identifying women in there who I've worked with, who I admire, who've inspired me in all that I do, it's just wonderful. If you're going to lift anything before Christmas, or you want a Christmas present to give you a wee boost, this is the one to do it, honestly. So thank you for that. I suppose there's a number of things that struck me about the book. One is the diversity of Reclaim the Agenda. The number of women from all different walks of life, all different backgrounds, that come together to be active in pushing and pressing for change. And I think that's the power that women have. We look at what happens up the hill, and we just see division. We just see mess. I mean, if anything, Storm Barra, who would be afraid of Barra? But anyway, Storm Barra broke the Christmas tree at Stormont this morning. He blew it over, he busted it, they're slaying in half, and it's really symbolic of what happens up that hill. They can't reach agreement on anything, never mind get a Christmas tree up. But, and you look at this book and you see the amount of women from all walks of life that come together, and we don't care where we're from, we don't care what we believe, we just know that we have issues in common that we have to come together, we have to fight on, and this book is about that activism and that collaboration. So it's collaboration from women all over the world and allies all over the world. It's collaboration with women and allies in the South, whether it was the Yes campaign or the Equal Marriage campaign. It's whoever will work with us so that we can benefit, and whoever we can work with to help benefit them. And that's no better experience I have of that than through the work of Alliance for Choice, who have made allies all over the world, Canada, Poland, Malta, you name it, wherever there is a struggle for reproductive justice, Alliance for Choice will have their navy nose in somewhere. And I think that's great, because that's what we have to do. It's all about pushing, it's all about the activism, and it's all about the collaboration, because alone we will not achieve any of this. What we've demonstrated, I think, in this book is that by coming together, that you press for change and you actually achieve things. Yes, there'll be lots of failures along the way, but when those wins come, as I remember them coming 22nd of October 2019, it is such a high to say that, yes, we've got there. And we can take and grab a breath at that moment, but we know we're not over. We know it's not finished. We know we have to keep going and going. As Amanda said at the start, we have to keep going and going and going. So the other thing that I thought was really important is the timing of this launch. Within the 16 days of action against gender violence, it's one of the most abhorrent and salient issues that continues to affect our lives all over the world. And it's just another indication of the lack of value that's placed on women's lives. How patriarchal structures are designed against us. How men think that they have privilege over women. How they can torture women, control women, and batter women. And I think having this publication during this period serves to highlight that not only is gender violence in all its forms wrong, and we'll continue to battle that, but all of these other issues matter as well. So when people say, oh, you're going on about women's equality, the gender pay gap and the glass ceiling, what I tell you, they're only symptoms of bigger structural change that needs to take place within our society. So yes, we're going to keep going, we're going to keep battling, and we're going to keep this activism going. But I love the book. I love the fact that it's being put together. I love the pictures, and I'm delighted that you're all here online in the room. And my heartfelt thanks to all those very inspirational activists and women who have pulled this together, because without yous, where would we be? Thank you.
Did not fly. So we are at the end here. I'm kind of looking to Helen here for a bit of
We're going to
reassurance.
take a wee 5-minute break. People want to get a cup of tea or coffee, and Emer's going to set up and give us a couple of songs.
Okay, well then I'm just going to say the closing words now, and then we've got Emer to look forward to. Okay, so yeah, huge thanks here to Sinead Cameron, who designed the book, our 184-page book, Phenomenal Women, A Decade of Action. Really well done, Sinead, thank you very much. For Lynda, who drove the book and drove us as well. Big thanks to Helen and to Danielle. I'd also like to give a big thanks to Jenny Bell. Jenny Bell, in the early years, you know, of her own accord, you know, came out to all the rallies, you know, any protests and things like that. And a lot of the images in the book were, you know, are there because Jenny and Anne, you know, turned up at everything, which was fantastic. Just to say as well that if you like the book, if you like what you've heard about RTA, you're all very welcome to attend RTA's AGM on Monday, the 13th, at 12:30. All you have to do is send an email to Helen at reclaimtheagenda.org, I think, and ask her for the link. And if you can't do that, then hopefully we'll get to see you at next year's International Women's Day. We've decided what our theme is. We don't go with the set theme. So our theme is World-Changing Women. That's our theme for IWD 2022. I'd also like to thank Amanda and Dawn, and a really huge big thanks to our star, Alicia, and obviously to Lynda again as well. So thanks very much. Thank you.
So low, as only a woman's heart can be, as only a woman's, as only a woman's, as only a woman's heart can know.